Dmitry Bivol finally got his revenge. So we just witnessed the biggest boxing card that the sport has ever seen, and my god, it did not disappoint, to say the least. It was a fantastic event packed with amazing fights, and I loved every single one of them for the most part. And I'd even say we have some fight of the year contenders on that card. So what we're going to do in today's video is we're going to break down the entire card, recap it. I'm going to touch briefly on the undercard fights, but then we're going to go into detail on the Bivol Beterbiev fight, why Bivol won, and break it down a little bit. So without further ado, let's just jump straight into it with the first fight. We had Joshua Buatsi versus Callum Smith. Now this was a fantastic fight and it did not disappoint, and possibly a contender for fight of the year. To say the least, a very back and forth action packed fight where both fighters were rocked at points in this fight, and it was 12 rounds of just straight action back and forth. It was a close fight, but Callum Smith ended up winning on a points decision. Now next up we had Zhang versus Kabayel. Now this was a heavyweight fight and a big step up for Kabayel, to say the least. However, he clearly stepped up to the plate. Although he did get dropped in the early rounds, he fought his way back, and those body shots he was landing were paying dividends because he dropped Zhang multiple times with vicious body shots, eventually finishing him, staying undefeated and defeating Big Bang Zhang. Next fight, and one of my favorite fights on the card actually, Virgil Ortiz Jr. versus Israel Madrimov. Now this was a huge step up for Virgil Ortiz in this case, considering he's undefeated and he's technically still a prospect working his way up the ranks, but he definitely proved that he's up there at that top level. But this was another fight on the card that was one of the best ones. Back and forth, action packed, especially that 10th round. I don't know if you've seen that, but that was a fantastic round. That was another close fight. Both fighters had glimpses of success in that fight, but at the end of it, Virgil Ortiz came out on top, defeating Israel Madrimov by a decision victory, taking him to 23-0. Now I don't know what's next for Virgil Ortiz. There could be a couple big names, maybe Jaron Ennis for a super fight. I don't know if he's ready for Terence Crawford quite yet, but who knows, we'll see. Next up we had Carlos Adames versus Hamza Sheeraz. Now this was a controversial one, to say the least. So another very close fight. However, it ended up being a draw, which is a fair decision. However, Hamza Sheeraz ended up breaking his hand early on into the fight, and it's probably the reason we saw a lack of output from him. Now, I think he boxed much better than Adames. I don't think Adames did anything too impressive. Yes, he was aggressive, but I don't think it was effective aggression. He wasn't landing too much, and it seemed to me that Hamza Sheeraz was in control the entire fight. Now the only problem was Hamza Sheeraz's output wasn't that great, and that probably is due to his broken hand. Like I said, I think if his output was higher, he would have taken the decision, but because of that, and because of Adames' aggression, it ended up being a draw. But in my opinion, and Sean Porter's opinion, I don't think Adames did enough to get a draw or a win, and I think Hamza Sheeraz did do enough to take a win, maybe by split decision, but I'm not unhappy with the draw. The one thing I do want to say is Chris Mannix's scorecard was ridiculous. Oh my days. This guy, he was pissing me off all night, to say the least. Chris Mannix, your scorecards are whack. In the least disrespectful way, me and you should have been on the main card, because bro, I don't know what you're watching. Like, maybe get your eyes checked or something, because this guy is crazy. His scorecards are crazy throughout the whole night. If you're watching and you look at the bottom left corner of the screen, Chris Mannix's scorecards, man, get him out of here. I'm so glad he's not a real judge. Alright, I'm done with my crash out on Chris Mannix. On to the next fight. We had Shakur Stevenson versus Josh Padley. Now I was most excited for Shakur Stevenson's fight against Floyd Schofield initially, but he had a late replacement, Josh Padley, and it was obvious, man. He beat him up for 9 rounds. And yeah, we saw a better Shakur. I think people were concerned that he was going to be more boring than he was. You know, Shakur's known for having not the most fan-friendly style, but you know, he didn't disappoint in this fight. He beat Padley up for 9 rounds and eventually finished him with a good body shot. Pretty good performance, but Josh Padley should not have been in there with Shakur Stevenson. He got beaten up badly, but good fight nonetheless. Nothing much to really say about it. Next up we had the co-main event, Joseph Parker versus Martin Bakole. Now I don't know if Bakole was a late replacement and this is the reason why, but he got finished in the second round, and pretty easily as well. Now either he was unprepared considering he had 3 days notice, which is probably fair, but still maybe he was just unqualified to be in there with Joseph Parker, because he walked straight into that overhand right, and the whole night he was so uncomposed. He came in, got caught with the overhand right to the equilibrium, obviously knocked off his balance, dropped him, and when he got up, the fight got called off, giving Joseph Parker a pretty easy W. But I don't know, man, Joseph Parker's starting to impress me recently. He's come with some pretty good performances, and I think that Dubois fight definitely needs to be next, and is the fight I was actually hoping for. But nonetheless, hopefully we'll have it next time. Now on to the main event, the one that everyone was excited for, and the one we're going to dive into a little bit. Dmitry Bivol versus Artur Beterbiev 2. Now this fight did not disappoint, and we all said that the first fight was a fight of the year contender. Well, I actually think it was better than the first fight, to be honest with you. It was a great fight. As we all know, Dmitry Bivol got his revenge, ended up coming out on top, and rightly so. The judges got it pretty spot on with this one, I think. Well, from the first half of the fight, Beterbiev looked really dominant, and I was actually starting to think that Bivol was unqualified to be in there with the Beterbiev that we saw on this night. Beterbiev was really dominant in the first half of this fight, had really effective aggression, and was near enough bullying Bivol for the first half of this fight. However, the dynamic in the second half of the fight completely changed and switched over to Dmitry Bivol. He made the necessary adjustments, switched up his plan, and boxed extremely nicely, to say the least. Now, I don't think Bivol was ever going to hurt Beterbiev, let's just be honest, but he fought really tactically and really smart. His movement was great, let his hands fly when he needed to, had great counters, and at some points was starting to clown Beterbiev in a way, making him look like an amateur in the second half of that fight. He had a very dominant second half of that fight, and is completely the reason he won this fight, in my opinion. The way Bivol was able to come back and win that fight, especially from being down in the first half, was just world class. I think it was amazing. I think he did a great job, fought a great fight, and him winning the fight was definitely the right decision in my opinion. The thing is, in the first fight, I actually thought Dmitry Bivol won the first, but it was pretty controversial because it was much closer. But in the second fight, I don't think anyone can argue that Beterbiev won that fight. I think that was quite clearly a Bivol win. And yeah, like I said, it was a close fight, but I think Bivol won that fair and square. Also, another thing I thought I'd mention is literally in the middle of the Beterbiev-Bivol fight, my parents bumped into Ryan Garcia. Super random, but I guess he was clearly not watching the fight. But they had a whole conversation with him, and apparently he's a really chill dude. So shout out to Ryan Garcia. But back to the Bivol-Beterbiev talk. What should happen next? Well, Beterbiev is 1-up, Bivol's 1-up. So I think it's only right as the fans we see a trilogy. I mean, I wouldn't complain about seeing that fight again. Both fights have been some of the best fights I've seen. So a third, I definitely wouldn't be upset with that. But what do you guys think? Is that enough Beterbiev-Bivol fights, or do we need a third? Let us know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications so you don't miss an upload. Anyways, that'll be all. I'll catch you in the next one.